She
I'm here to
visited
see
her
my
husband
husband,
at
the
his
CEO.
job as a CEO.
Ma'am, I see
At
his
the
wife
entrance,
every day.
there was a
There
sign
she is,
that
coming out
said,
right now.
"Authorized personnel only." When she told the guard she was the CEO's wife, he laughed and said, "Ma'am, I see his wife every day. There she is, coming out right now." So she decided to play along. Don't miss the end, my loyal family. Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to our family channel, Mr. Peter's Stories. May every woman in this family be wrapped in strength so pure and dignity so bright that nothing in this world can dim her light. May your heart stay soft yet unbreakable, your step steady even in storms, and your days overflow with peace that warms every soul around you. You are the pillars of compassion, the voice of wisdom, and the gentle power that keeps every home alive. I pray that life opens doors of health, joy, and endless blessings for you. May your nights rest in calm, your mornings rise with hope, and your journey be guided by kindness and grace. And my precious family, tell me, what are your preparations for the upcoming Christmas? I want to celebrate your happiness with you, because your joy is my strength. If your heart is true, like the video. If your love is real, write, "I am with Mr. Peter." The security guard's laughter hit Janice Jacob like a slap, but marriage had taught her that the most dangerous weapon wasn't rage. It was silence. She stood in the marble lobby of Wells Corporation headquarters, holding a lunch container she'd spent the morning preparing. The building rose around her like a glass cathedral, all sharp edges and reflected light. Everything here spoke of money and power, the kind her husband Michael had built from nothing. The kind she'd supported through late nights and missed birthdays and conversations that ended with exhaustion instead of connection. The guard was young, maybe fresh out of the military based on his posture. He looked at her the way people look at confused elderly women who've wandered into the wrong place. "Ma'am, I'm telling you, this is a restricted entrance, authorized personnel only." Janice kept her voice steady. "I understand that. I'm Janice Jacob. My husband is Michael Wells, the CEO. I brought him lunch." The guard's face changed, not with recognition, but with something worse. Pity mixed with amusement. He glanced at his colleague, a stockier man, who was suddenly very interested in his computer screen. "Ma'am?" The young guard's voice took on that careful tone people use when they think you're delusional. "I see Mr. Wells's wife every single day. She comes through this lobby every morning and leaves around 6. I know Mrs. Wells." The words landed like stones in water, creating ripples that spread through Janice's chest. She forced herself to breathe normally, to keep her expression neutral. Marriage meant learning to control her face when the world tilted sideways. "Perhaps there's been some confusion," she said carefully. "No confusion, ma'am." The guard actually smiled now, like he was about to clear up a silly misunderstanding. "Mrs. Wells is probably still upstairs. You can wait if you want, but—" He stopped mid-sentence, his eyes focusing on something behind her. "Actually, there she is now." Janice turned. The woman emerging from the elevator bank was stunning in a way that made expensive seem effortless. Dark hair pulled back in a style that took apparent simplicity and made it art. A dress that fit like water, heels that added height, but somehow looked comfortable. She carried a designer handbag that Janice recognized from window shopping she'd done last spring, back when she thought maybe updating her wardrobe might make Michael look at her again. The woman walked through the lobby like she owned it. And maybe she did, in all the ways that mattered. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Wells," the young guard called out cheerfully. The woman, Marta, though Janice didn't know her name yet, smiled at him. "Have a wonderful day, Thomas." She knew his name. She knew his name because she came here every single day, was welcomed here every single day, was recognized and greeted and treated like exactly what she claimed to be, Michael Wells's wife. The world had gone very quiet. Janice could hear her own heartbeat, could feel the weight of the lunch container in her hands. She'd made Michael's favorite, roasted chicken with herbs she'd grown herself, the recipe his mother had taught her before she died. Back when Janice was the bride being welcomed into the Wells family, back when Michael's promises were new enough to believe, Marta walked past without even glancing at Janice. Why would she? Janice was nobody. Just another middle-aged woman clutching a lunch container in a building lobby, invisible in the way women become when they stop fitting into the spaces designed for beauty. The guard turned back to Janice with an expression that was almost kind. "So you see, ma'am, there must be some mistake. Maybe you have the wrong building. There's another big corporate place 2 blocks down." Janice looked at him, really looked at him. He believed what he was saying. He wasn't being cruel. He'd never seen her before, and he saw Marta every day. In his reality, in this building's reality, Marta Isabel was Mrs. Wells, the real one, the legitimate one, and Janice was the imposter. Something crystallized in that moment. She could scream. She could demand to see Michael. She could pull out her wallet and show identification, marriage certificate, joint bank statements, all the paper proof that she was who she claimed to be. She could make a scene that would echo through this building's halls, that would force everyone to acknowledge the impossible situation. Or she could do something smarter. "You're absolutely right," Janice heard herself say. "I must have confused the address. I apologize for the confusion." The guard's relief was visible. "No problem, ma'am. Happens all the time in this area. All these towers look the same." Janice smiled at him. A real smile, because in that moment, she'd made a decision that felt like power flowing back into her veins. "Thank you for your patience." She walked out of the building with the same measured pace she'd walked in. She didn't run. She didn't look back. She walked past the fountain in the plaza, past the coffee cart where she and Michael used to meet when they were young and in love, and believed they'd last forever. She walked to her car, the sensible sedan that Michael had bought her when their daughter was small, and sat in the driver's seat. Through the windshield, she watched the building's entrance, watched the people coming and going, watched the world continue as if nothing had changed, but everything had changed. She pulled out her phone and opened the camera app. She knew what she was looking for now. She knew why that expensive handbag had looked familiar. She'd seen Michael ordering it online months ago. She'd assumed it was for her birthday, had felt touched that he'd remembered she liked that brand. He'd remembered, just not for her. She waited, watched. 15 minutes crawled by before Marta emerged again, heading for the parking garage. Janice's fingers were steady as she started her car and followed at a careful distance, not close enough to be noticed, but close enough to see Marta climb into a sleek silver car that definitely hadn't come from any dealership Janice recognized. Janice photographed the license plate, photographed the car, photographed Marta through the driver's window, her profile perfect in the afternoon light. Then she sat back and thought about the lunch container still sitting on her passenger seat, thought about the security guard's laughter, thought about Michael's hand on someone else's back, his smile for someone else's morning greeting, his name becoming someone else's possession. She thought about all the nights he'd worked late, all the conferences, all the times he'd come home smelling like perfume he'd explained away with client dinners and crowded elevators. All the credit card charges she'd questioned and he'd smoothly justified. Her phone was still in her hand. She scrolled through her contacts until she found a name she hadn't called in years. Her brother's old college roommate, the one who'd gone into private investigation after the military. She'd kept his number out of some instinct she hadn't understood at the time. She understood it now. Her finger hovered over the call button. Once she made this call, once she started down this path, there would be no going back to the woman who'd walked into that building, carrying lunch and believing in her marriage. But that woman was already gone. She'd disappeared the moment the security guard laughed. The moment Marta walked past without seeing her. The moment Janice realized that to everyone in her husband's life, she was already a ghost. She pressed the call button. It rang twice before a rough voice answered, "This is Davidson." Janice kept her voice calm, kept everything that was breaking inside her locked behind glass. "This is Janice Jacob. We met at my brother's wedding years ago. You said if I ever needed anything, any kind of help, I could call." A pause. "I remember. What kind of help are you looking for?" Janice watched Marta's car disappear around the corner. She thought about Michael sitting in his office, probably on the phone, probably making decisions about their money and their future and their life, without once thinking about the woman who'd built it all beside him. "I need to disappear completely," she said. The 6 words hung in the air like a promise, like a threat, like the first move in a game Michael Wells didn't even know he was playing. Chapter 2. The Ghost Wife. The hotel room smelled like industrial cleaner in other people's lives. Janice set her suitcase on the luggage rack and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the generic watercolor print on the wall she'd checked in under her maiden name, Jacob. The clerk hadn't blinked. To him, she was just another tired woman needing a room for reasons that weren't his concern. Her phone had been buzzing for hours. Michael calling again, then texting, "Where are you?" Getting worried. Another one. "Janice, please call me back." Then, "If you don't answer, I'm calling the police." She turned the phone face down on the nightstand. Davidson had agreed to meet her the next morning at a diner on the other side of town. Until then, she had nothing but time and a room that felt like limbo. She opened her suitcase and looked at what she'd grabbed in the chaos of leaving: clothes, toiletries, her grandmother's necklace, a photo album she hadn't opened in years. Things you take when you're not sure if you're coming back. Sleep didn't come that night. She lay in the dark watching shadows from passing cars slide across the ceiling, thinking about the woman in the lobby, Marta. The name felt foreign in her mouth, like a word from a language she'd never learned to speak. Who was she? Where had Michael found her? How long had this been happening? The questions multiplied like bacteria, each one splitting into 2 more until her head throbbed. At sunrise, she showered in the tiny bathroom and dressed in jeans and a sweater. She looked at herself in the mirror. Really looked. When had the lines around her eyes gotten so deep? When had her hair started showing this much silver? She'd been disappearing long before the security guard refused to recognize her. She'd been fading for years, while Michael looked right through her. The diner was a relic from another era, all chrome and red vinyl. Davidson was already there, sitting in a corner booth with his back to the wall. He'd aged since the wedding where they'd met, his hair mostly grey now, his face carved with the kind of lines that came from seeing things you couldn't unsee. Janice. He stood when she approached, gestured for her to sit. "You look like hell. Thank you for meeting me. You said you needed to disappear. Want to tell me why?" She pulled out her phone and showed him the photos she'd taken outside Wells Corporation. "My husband has another wife, or I'm the other wife. I'm not sure which anymore." Davidson studied the images, his expression neutral. "Michael Wells. Your husband is the CEO guy. Was my husband, is my husband. I don't know what he is now." A waitress appeared, poured coffee neither of them had asked for, and vanished. Davidson pulled out a small notebook. "Tell me everything." So she did. The whole story spilled out. The surprise visit, the guard's laughter, Marta walking through the lobby like she belonged there. She told him about the handbag, the late nights, the years of feeling like she was competing for attention in her own marriage. Without knowing there was an actual competition, Davidson listened without interrupting, taking notes in shorthand she couldn't read. When she finished, he sat back and sipped his coffee. "You want to know who she is. I want to know everything. That's going to take time and money. I have both." He named a fee that made her flinch, but she nodded. What was money compared to understanding how thoroughly her life had become a lie? "Give me 2 days, Davidson said. "Don't go home. Don't answer Michael's calls. Don't tell anyone where you are. I haven't. Good. Stay invisible. That's your advantage right now. Janice returned to the hotel and waited. The hours crawled by like wounded animals. She ordered room service and ate without tasting. She watched television shows that were just noise and light. She existed in suspension, neither here nor there, neither wife nor ex-wife, neither visible nor completely gone. Michael's calls became frantic. He left voicemails that progressed from concerned to angry to desperate. Janice, whatever's wrong, we can fix it. Just come home. Please, I love you. Those 3 words, I love you, felt obscene coming through the phone speaker. How many times had he said them to Marta? How many times had he switched between versions of his life like changing channels, never missing a beat? On the second evening, her daughter Emma called. Janice let it ring through to voicemail, then listened to Emma's voice with her heart cracking down the middle. Mom, Dad says you're not answering your phone. He's really worried. I'm worried. Can you call me back? Are you okay? Emma, her beautiful girl who'd inherited Michael's dark eyes and Janice's stubborn chin, who was getting married soon to a man who looked at her like she hung the moon, who still believed her parents were solid, stable, the kind of marriage to aspire to. Janice saved the voicemail but didn't call back. Davidson knocked on her door at noon on the 3rd day. He carried a manila envelope, thick with papers and photos. Janice let him in, closed the door, and sat down to learn the truth about her life. Your husband is living a double life, Davidson said without preamble. Marta Isabel believes she's his only wife. He told her you died in a car accident last year. The words hit like a physical blow. Dead. He'd killed her off in his other life, made her a tragedy to explain away any questions. She pressed her hand against her chest, half expecting to find a wound. Davidson spread photos across the bed. Marta at a restaurant. Marta shopping Marta, entering a townhouse that Janice had never seen before. That property is in her name. So are 2 others, a beach house and a rental property. He's been buying real estate and putting it under her name for months now. With our money. Your money, yes. Davidson pulled out bank statements, transaction records, a web of numbers that showed money flowing out of accounts Janice had access to and into accounts she'd never known existed, offshore accounts, shell companies with names that meant nothing. He's been planning this, Janice said slowly. This isn't just an affair. No, this is theft, fraud. He's systematically moving assets out of reach. She picked up a photo of Marta, a candid shot of her laughing at something, her whole face bright with joy. She looked happy. She looked like a woman in love with a man who loved her back. Does she know about me? I don't think so. From what I can tell, she genuinely believes his story. She's posted on social media about being a widow who found love again. She talks about his late wife like it's a tragedy they're moving past together. Janice set the photo down carefully, like it might shatter. What else? Davidson hesitated. There's more. Marta visited a fertility clinic. The world tilted again. Pregnant? The timing suggests yes, but I can't confirm without medical records we don't have access to. Janice stood and walked to the window. Outside, life continued. People walked dogs. Cars stopped at red lights. The sun kept shining like everything was normal. But in this room, in this moment, normal had become a foreign country she'd been exiled from. What do I do? She heard the break in her own voice, hated it. That depends on what you want. Revenge, your money back, a divorce, all of the above. Janice thought about Marta's smile in that photo. Thought about a baby, Michael's baby, growing inside another woman. Thought about Emma's wedding and the family photos they'd planned to take. Thought about the house she'd made into a home, the garden she'd planted, the life she'd believed in. I want to understand how deep this goes before I do anything. If he's been stealing from me, what else has he done? Davidson nodded slowly. You want the full investigation? Everything. I want to know every lie, every crime, every secret. I want to see the complete picture before I decide how to burn it down. That's going to take time, weeks, maybe months. I'm not going anywhere. After Davidson left, Janice sat alone with the evidence of her husband's betrayal spread across the hotel bed. She picked up her phone and typed a message to Michael. I need some space. Don't worry, I'm safe. His response came immediately. Thank God I've been losing my mind. When are you coming home? She stared at the question. Home. What did that word even mean anymore? The house where she'd lived was just a building. The marriage certificate was just paper. The man she'd loved had been replaced by a stranger wearing his face. I don't know, she typed back. Then she turned off her phone completely, cutting the last thread connecting her to the woman she used to be. In the silence that followed, Janice Jacob began to plan. Chapter 3. The Investment. Janice had been invisible for a week when she decided to attend the gallery opening. The invitation had arrived at the hotel, forwarded by the neighbor who'd been collecting her mail, a charity event, the kind Michael usually insisted they attend together. Appearing successful was part of the job, he always said. Show people you belong at the top, and they'll believe it. She wondered if he'd take Marta this time, or if he'd invent another excuse for Janice's absence, another lie to paper over the crack spreading through his carefully constructed world Davidson had called that morning with an update that made her blood run cold. The house, their house, the one she'd chosen, the one where she'd raised their daughter, had been mortgaged without her signature. The documents bore her name in a handwriting close enough to fool anyone who wasn't looking carefully. Forgery, added to theft and bigamy and whatever else lurked in the shadows of Michael's double life. The good news, Davidson had said, is that forgery gives you leverage. The bad news is proving it in court could take months, and by then he might have emptied everything else. Janice had thanked him and hung up. Then she'd sat on the hotel bed and made a decision that felt like stepping off a cliff. She called the number on a business card she'd been carrying for weeks. A man answered on the third ring. Richard Chen. Mr. Chen, my name is Jennifer Collins. The alias came easily, like she'd been practicing. I have information about Wells Corporation that might interest you. A pause. What kind of information? The kind that could change the balance of power in your industry. Can we meet? They arranged to meet at a coffee shop far from Wells Corporation, far from anywhere Michael might go. Janice arrived early, chose a table in the back, and waited. Richard Chen was younger than she'd expected, sharp-eyed and dressed in the kind of casual clothes that cost more than they looked. He sat down across from her and studied her face. Jennifer Collins, that's not your real name. Does it matter? Depends on whether what you're selling is real. Janice slid a folder across the table. Inside were copies. Just copies. She wasn't foolish enough to give away originals of the financial irregularities Davidson had uncovered. Money moving through strange channels, properties bought and sold through shell companies, numbers that didn't add up the way they should. Richard flipped through the pages, his expression shifting from skeptical to interested to hungry. Where did you get this? That's not important. What's important is whether you can use it. If this is accurate, Wells Corporation has been lying to shareholders about their asset base. This is fraud. That's your conclusion, not mine. Richard looked up at her, and she saw the calculation in his eyes. He was trying to figure out what her angle was, why she'd bring this to him specifically. What do you want in return? Nothing now. If you investigate and find I'm right, I'll be in touch about payment. That's not how this works. That's how it works with me. Janice stood. You have my number. Use it or don't. She walked out before he could ask more questions. Her heart hammered against her ribs, adrenaline singing through her blood. She'd just handed Michael's rival the ammunition to destroy him. Or at least to start asking questions Michael wouldn't want to answer. The gallery opening was that evening. Janice spent hours getting ready, transforming herself in ways she hadn't bothered with in years. She bought a new dress, red, bold, nothing like what the old Janice would have worn. She had her hair done at a salon, color added to cover the silver, styled in a way that made her look like someone else. Makeup applied with care, heels that hurt but changed how she moved through space. When she looked in the mirror, a stranger looked back. Good. Strangers could go places wives couldn't. The gallery was packed with people wearing wealth like comfortable old clothes. Janice accepted a glass of champagne from a server and moved through the crowd, watching. She spotted Michael within minutes. Impossible to miss, tall and commanding, smiling that smile that had once made her stomach flip. Marta was with him. Of course she was. Her arm looped through his, leaning into him the way Janice used to lean. They moved through the room like royalty, greeting people, laughing at jokes, playing the perfect couple. Janice positioned herself across the gallery, behind a sculpture that gave her cover. She watched Michael's hand rest on the small of Marta's back, watched him lean down to whisper something in her ear that made her smile. Watched the way he touched her, casual, possessive, the same way he'd touched Janice before familiarity bred indifference. But she watched Marta more closely. The younger woman's movements held a carefulness that went beyond poise. Her hand occasionally drifted to her stomach in a gesture so subtle most people would miss it. But Janice had been pregnant once. She recognized the unconscious checking, the protective awareness of something precious growing inside you. So it was true. Marta was carrying Michael's child. The baby Janice had wanted years ago, the one Michael had said they couldn't afford, that the timing was wrong, that maybe later when things were more stable. Things were stable now. Just stable enough for a different woman to give him what Janice never could again. She watched Michael's hand drift to Marta's stomach, settling there with gentle certainty. The gesture was so familiar, it hollowed Janice out. That was exactly how he'd touched her when she was pregnant with Emma. The same protective curve of his palm, the same expression of wonder and fear mixed together. The gallery walls seemed to close in. Janice set down her champagne glass and walked to the bathroom, locked herself in a stall, and breathed through the wave of loss that threatened to drown her. When she emerged, her makeup was intact, her mask firmly back in place. She avoided Michael and Marta for the rest of the evening, but she watched. She watched who they talked to, which people Michael seemed nervous around, which conversations made him tense. Near the end of the evening, she saw something interesting. A woman approached Michael and Marta, said something brief, and walked away. But Michael's whole body had changed in that moment. His smile became fixed. His hand tightened on Marta's arm. When Marta asked him something, Janice could read the question on her lips even from across the room. He shook his head and steered her toward the exit. Janice followed the woman Michael had avoided. She was older, elegant, wearing black, and moving with purpose. Janice caught up with her outside. "Excuse me, I'm sorry to bother you, but I saw you speak with Michael Wells inside. I'm trying to find information about his business partner, the one who died." The woman turned, her eyes sharp and assessing. "Why would you want information about that?" "Because I think the official story is wrong." Something shifted in the woman's expression. "Who are you?" Someone asking the right questions. The woman studied her for a long moment. Then she pulled out a business card and handed it over. "My name is Linda Hartley. That was my husband who died. If you want to talk about what really happened, call me." She walked away into the night, leaving Janice holding the card like a key to a door she wasn't sure she wanted to open. Back at the hotel, Janice researched Linda Hartley until dawn. Her husband had been Michael's business partner in the early days. They'd built Wells Corporation together. Then he died, suddenly, unexpectedly, of a heart attack that the autopsy said was natural causes. But Linda Hartley didn't believe it. She'd been fighting that conclusion, quietly and without success, ever since. Janice stared at her laptop screen, at the photo of Linda's husband, a man who'd been Michael's friend, his partner, his brother, in all but blood. A man who died just as the company became successful enough to matter. How far did Michael's lies go? How deep did his willingness to hurt people extend? She picked up Linda's business card and added it to the growing pile of evidence and contacts and pieces of a puzzle she was beginning to understand might be bigger and darker than she'd imagined. Her phone buzzed. A message from Richard Chen. "We need to talk. Tomorrow. Same place." Janice smiled in the darkness of her hotel room. The first domino had been pushed. The rest would fall in time. Chapter 4. The daughter's wedding. Emma's wedding invitation sat on the hotel dresser like an accusation. Janice picked it up for the 100th time, running her fingers over the embossed lettering. Her daughter's name paired with her fiancé's, the date, the venue. All the details of a future being built on foundations Janice had thought were solid, but now knew were sand. Her phone rang. Emma. Again. This time Janice answered. "Mom, finally! Where have you been? I've been calling for weeks." "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I've been dealing with some things. Personal things." "What kind of personal things?" "Dad won't tell me anything except that you needed space. Are you guys fighting?" The concern in Emma's voice was a knife between Janice's ribs. Her daughter still believed in them, still thought whatever was happening was temporary, fixable, the kind of rough patch all marriages went through. "We're working through some challenges," Janice said carefully, "but that's not important right now. Your wedding is what matters. Tell me what you need from me." Emma's voice brightened with relief. "Can you come dress shopping? I want to find something for you to wear, and we need to finalize the seating chart. And Mom, I really need you there for the rehearsal dinner. Please tell me you'll be back by then." "I'll be there, I promise." After they hung up, Janice sat with the weight of that promise. She'd have to see Michael. She'd have to pretend everything was fine. She'd have to smile and play the mother of the bride while her marriage crumbled in secret. Davidson had called that morning with discoveries that made her blood run cold. Michael had consulted with divorce attorneys, shopping for the one who'd give him the best outcome. He was planning to file right after Emma's wedding. The timeline was clear. Let Emma have her perfect day, then destroy Janice's life. Claim irreconcilable differences. Paint himself as reasonable while making her look unstable. The woman who'd vanished without explanation, worried everyone, couldn't handle stress. Michael was building a narrative, just like he'd built a second life, just like he'd built an empire on lies and theft. "There's more," Davidson had said. "The house. He mortgaged it without your signature." Janice felt the air leave her lungs. "That's impossible. I never signed anything." "Exactly. The documents have your signature, but it's forged. Good enough to pass initial scrutiny, but definitely not authentic." So he committed fraud. Multiple counts. The mortgage company, the bank, probably others. This isn't just infidelity anymore, Janice. This is serious criminal activity. She thought about the house, the one she'd chosen, where she'd made curtains for Emma's room, where she'd planted roses that bloomed every spring. Michael had stolen it from her without her even knowing. What else has he taken? "I'm still digging, but there are patterns emerging. Properties purchased in Marta's name using money from your joint accounts. Investment accounts you've never heard of, shell companies with meaningless names. He's been systematically moving assets for months." After hanging up, Janice stared at the business card Linda Hartley had given her at the gallery, the elegant woman who'd made Michael so uncomfortable, who'd said her husband died and she didn't believe the official story. Janice wasn't ready to make that call yet, not until she'd faced Emma first. She met her daughter at a bridal boutique in a quiet neighborhood. Emma walked in looking radiant, happiness pouring off her in waves. She hugged Janice hard enough to hurt. "I missed you so much. You look different." "Just tired, sweetheart." No, it's something else. Your hair? You look younger somehow. Janice forced a smile. Must be all that personal reflection time. They spent hours looking at dresses. Emma finally settled on soft blue that made her eyes luminous. She twirled in front of the mirror, already imagining the wedding day. You and Dad will sit at the head table, of course. Right next to me and James. I want you both close. Janice nodded, not trusting her voice. Is everything really okay, Mom? You seem sad. I'm happy for you. That's what matters. Emma studied her reflection, then turned serious. You know what I've always loved about you and Dad? You've always been a team, even when things were hard. That's what I want with James, that kind of partnership. The words were meant as a compliment. They landed like blows. Marriage is complicated, Janice heard herself say. It's not always what it looks like from the outside. I know, but you guys have something real. Janice excused herself to the bathroom and stood in the stall, hands pressed against the walls, breathing through the urge to scream. Emma's faith in her parents' marriage was pure and unshakable. Destroying that faith would destroy something essential in her daughter. When she came out, Emma was paying for the dress, chattering about the wedding timeline. Janice listened and nodded and played her part. They had lunch at a cafe Emma loved. Her daughter talked about the honeymoon, 2 weeks in Greece, first-class tickets as a surprise from James, and the apartment they'd found, and James's new job offer. I want what you have, Emma said suddenly. That's my goal, to still be in love after all these years, to still choose each other every day. Janice reached across the table and took her daughter's hand. Emma, listen to me. Whatever happens, whatever you learn about people or relationships or life, remember this. You are strong enough to handle it. You are smart enough to see truth. You don't have to stay anywhere that makes you less than who you are. Emma laughed, confused. That's kind of heavy for dress shopping, Mom. Promise me you'll remember it anyway. Okay, I promise. Are you sure you're all right? I'm sure. That evening, back at the hotel, Janice spread Davidson's findings across the bed. Bank statements showing money flowing into accounts she'd never heard of, property deeds in Marta's name, the forged mortgage documents, all the evidence of systematic fraud. But if Linda Hartley was right, fraud was just the beginning. If Michael had killed his business partner, if there was a pattern of convenient deaths, then this was bigger and darker than theft. Janice picked up her phone and stared at Linda's business card. The woman had been watching Michael for years, waiting for someone with access to help bring him down. She thought about Marta, pregnant, and trusting about the insurance policies Michael had probably already taken out, about how easy it would be to make another accident happen. She thought about Emma's wedding, weeks away, about standing beside Michael, playing happy parents, while knowing what she knew. Could she do it? Could she smile and dance and make toasts while carrying these secrets, while planning his destruction? She looked at herself in the mirror. The woman looking back was harder than she'd been weeks ago, more capable, less afraid of ugly truths. Yes, she could do it. She could play whatever role was necessary to protect her daughter and stop Michael. Janice dialed Linda's number. It rang twice before a familiar voice answered. I was wondering when you'd call. You said your husband died. You said you don't believe the official story. I don't. James was murdered, and I've spent 5 years trying to prove it. The word, murdered, hung between them like poison. I need to know everything, Janice said. Not over the phone, can we meet? Tomorrow morning, my house. I'll show you everything I've collected. Linda paused. Fair warning, Janice. Once you see what I have, there's no going back. You'll know exactly what your husband is capable of. Are you ready for that? Janice thought about the security guard's laughter, about Marta walking past her like she was invisible, about Emma's faith in a marriage built on lies, about Michael's gentle touches, hiding murderous intent. I'm ready. Linda gave her the address and hung up. Janice sat alone in her hotel room, knowing that tomorrow would take her deeper into darkness, that she'd learn things she couldn't unlearn, see things she couldn't unsee, but the alternative was doing nothing. Letting Michael continue his pattern, letting another woman die because Janice had been too afraid to act. She pulled out Davidson's files one more time, memorizing details, preparing questions. Tomorrow she'd meet with Linda and learn about the bodies buried in Michael's past. Tonight, she'd prepare herself for whatever came next. Janice Jacob was done being invisible, done being dismissed, done being the wife who disappeared without a fight. She was becoming something else, something Michael Wells should have feared from the very beginning. Chapter 5. The Business Partner's Widow. Linda Hartley's house was nothing like Janice expected. She'd imagined something dark and cluttered, the home of a woman consumed by grief and obsession. Instead, the colonial was bright and immaculate, with gardens that spoke of careful attention and rooms filled with photographs of happier times. Linda answered the door wearing jeans and a sweater, looking more like someone's grandmother than someone who'd spent years tracking a killer. You came. Linda stepped aside to let her in. I wasn't sure you would. You said you had answers. I need answers. Coffee first, then I'll show you everything. They sat in Linda's kitchen, sunny, warm, the kind of space where families gathered for ordinary life. The normalcy of it made everything that came next feel even more surreal. Linda set down 2 mugs and pulled out a banker's box from under the table. This is everything I've collected on Michael Wells over the past 5 years. Financial records, photographs, timeline of suspicious deaths, insurance policies, all of it. Janice opened the box. The sheer volume was overwhelming. Folders organized by year, by victim, by type of crime. This wasn't casual investigation. This was obsession refined into methodology. Start at the beginning, Janice said. Tell me about your husband. Linda's expression softened with remembered love. James was a good man, honest, hard-working, loyal to a fault. He and Michael started Wells Corporation together as equal partners. They were friends first, business partners second. James trusted Michael completely. What changed? Success, money, power. James started noticing irregularities 5 years ago. Money moving through unrecognized accounts, clients being overcharged. Corners cut that violated regulations. He thought they were mistakes at first, but when he dug deeper, he realized it was intentional. Linda pulled out a folder labeled James's Notes. Inside were pages of handwritten observations, dates, amounts, questions circled in red ink. James was building a case. He planned to confront Michael, demand a full audit, threaten authorities if Michael didn't stop. That was a Tuesday. Wednesday, they had dinner to talk it through. Thursday morning, I found James dead in bed. Her voice remained steady, but her hands twisted a napkin. Heart attack, the coroner said. No sign of foul play, clean toxicology. Men his age sometimes just drop dead. It happens. But you didn't believe it. James ran marathons. His last checkup was perfect. His doctor said he had the heart of a man 20 years younger. Men like that don't die without warning unless something else is going on. The drugs that mimic heart attacks, they don't show up unless you're specifically looking for them, Linda continued. By the time I knew enough to ask the right questions, too much time had passed. The evidence was gone. Janice thought about Michael sitting across a dinner table from his best friend, knowing he'd already decided to kill him. The coldness of that calculation made her skin crawl. You mentioned another woman, Grace. Linda's face darkened. Grace Anderson, real estate agent. She worked with Michael on property acquisitions about a year after James died. I saw them together at a restaurant. The way Michael touched her hand reminded me of how he used to be with you before everything changed. She pulled out another folder. Inside was a death certificate. drowning accident while swimming alone at night. Her body was found 2 days later. Accidental death. No suspicious circumstances. Except Michael had a life insurance policy on her named himself as beneficiary. Called her a business partner on development projects. The paperwork was legitimate enough that no one questioned it. The policy paid out $250,000. Janice felt sick. How many development projects did they actually have? According to county records, one, a small commercial property that sold for modest profit months before she died. Nothing that would justify a $250,000 insurance policy. So he insured her life, then made sure he collected. That's my assessment, and now he's doing it again with Marta. I've been watching Wells Corporation. Marta comes to the office every day. She's pregnant, and if Michael follows his pattern, he's already taken out insurance on her life. Janice thought about Marta's smile, about her hand on her growing belly, about the baby who'd become a financial asset in Michael's twisted calculations. We need to warn her. We will, but carefully. If Marta goes to Michael with accusations, he'll know someone's been investigating. He'll destroy evidence, disappear funds, maybe even accelerate his timeline. We need to gather everything first, then move all at once. How? Your daughter's wedding. The rehearsal dinner is your best window. Michael will be there the whole evening, performing for family and friends. The house will be empty. That's when we go in. You want me to break into my own house. I want you to retrieve what's yours and gather evidence that will stop a killer. Linda leaned forward. Michael keeps files at home, personal records he can't risk having at the office, bank statements, property deeds, correspondence. If we can access those files, we can find evidence of everything, the fraud, the hidden assets, maybe even something about Grace or James. What about security systems? Do you know the code? I set it up years ago, but he might have changed it. Try yours first. Men rarely change things that already work, and even if he did, I have someone who can disable it remotely. Janice studied the older woman. Linda had been carrying this mission for years, had turned grief into expertise, had built a network and waited for the right moment. Why trust me? You don't know if I'm capable of this. I know you're capable of whatever it takes to survive. I saw it at the gallery. You've already changed into someone new, someone harder, someone willing to do what needs to be done. Linda's eyes were fierce. The question isn't whether you're capable. The question is whether you're ready to see this through to the end, no matter what we find. Janice thought about the security guard's laughter, about Marta walking past her like she was invisible, about Emma's faith in a marriage built on lies, about Michael's gentle touches, hiding murderous intent. I'm ready. They spent the next hour going over logistics. Linda had floor plans of the house drawn from memory. She had equipment already purchased and tested, portable scanners, external hard drives, everything needed to copy files quickly. She had escape routes planned, backup strategies prepared. After we copy everything, where does it go? Federal Bureau of Investigation. I have a contact there, an agent who investigated financial crimes. I've been feeding him information for years, building credibility. The moment we have documentation showing systematic fraud, insurance schemes, and possible homicide, he'll move on it. How long before Michael knows? Depends on how fast the FBI works. Days, maybe a week. But once we turn over the evidence, it's out of our hands. The important thing is getting you and Marta somewhere safe before Michael realizes what's happening. Linda walked Janice to the door. This is your last chance to walk away. Once we do this, once we commit, there's no going back. Michael will know you betrayed him. He'll do everything in his power to destroy you. Janice thought about Grace Anderson drowning in dark water, about James Hartley dying in his sleep, about Marta, pregnant and trusting, being positioned as the next convenient tragedy. He's already destroyed me. Now I'm going to return the favor. Linda smiled, sharp and satisfied. Then we have a deal. I'll finalize the equipment. You focus on getting through the wedding preparations without tipping Michael off. We moved during the rehearsal dinner. No mistakes. No mistakes, Janice agreed. She drove back to the hotel with the weight of conspiracy pressing against her chest. She was going to rob her own house. She was going to steal from the man she'd been married to for more than 2 decades. She was going to use her daughter's joy as cover for revenge. The old Janice would have been horrified. But the old Janice had believed in things that weren't real. She'd trusted systems that didn't protect her. She'd played by rules that men like Michael wrote and rewrote whenever convenient. This new Janice understood something fundamental. The only justice she'd get was the kind she took for herself. And if that meant becoming someone she didn't fully recognize yet, someone capable of things she'd never imagined, then that's what she'd do. Because the alternative was letting Michael win, letting him kill again, letting another woman disappear while he collected insurance money and moved on to the next victim. Janice Jacob refused to be another body. And she'd burn her old life to the ground if that's what it took to survive. Chapter 6. The Network. Emma's rehearsal dinner was at a restaurant with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the water. Janice arrived fashionably late, wearing a dress she'd bought specifically for tonight. Elegant, appropriate, the kind of thing a proud mother would wear. She'd styled her hair differently, added jewelry that caught the light. She looked exactly like who she was supposed to be. A woman celebrating her daughter's happiness. Michael was already there, holding court at the head table. He saw her enter, and his whole face transformed. Relief mixed with guilt, mixed with something that might have been genuine affection, all tangled together in an expression that would have convinced anyone watching that he was a devoted husband. He crossed the room and pulled her into an embrace. "Thank God you're here. I've been so worried." Janice let herself lean into him, breathing in his cologne, the same one he'd worn for years, familiar as her own heartbeat. "I told you I'd be here." "I know, but after you disappeared..." He pulled back to look at her face. "Are you all right? Really all right?" "I just needed time to think, to clear my head." "You understand?" "Of course. Whatever you need." His hands were warm on her arms. His eyes searched hers. "We should talk after tonight. About us." "Yes," Janice agreed. "We should." Emma descended on them then, radiant in a white cocktail dress, pulling them both into a hug. "My parents. Together. This is all I wanted." The dinner proceeded with champagne toasts and speeches that made everyone laugh or cry or both. Emma's fiancé, James, stood and talked about finding his soulmate, about building a life with someone who challenged him to be better. Michael gave a toast about love and commitment and partnership that was so heartfelt, so seemingly genuine, that Janice almost believed it herself. Almost. She watched him throughout the evening. Watched how he worked the room, shaking hands, telling jokes, making everyone feel like they were the most important person there. She recognized it now. The performance he'd been giving their entire marriage. The careful construction of a persona designed to make people trust him, love him, give him what he wanted. Marta wasn't there. Janice had expected her to be, had braced herself for the awkwardness of her husband's 2 lives colliding. But Michael had come alone, played the devoted father beautifully, never once checking his phone or seeming distracted, because he'd compartmentalized them completely. This box for Janice and Emma, that box for Marta and the baby growing inside her. Never the two shall meet, not until Michael controlled the narrative completely. Around 8, Janice excused herself to the restroom. She pulled out her phone and texted Linda, "He's here. You have 2 hours." Linda's response came immediately. "Already in position. Good luck." Janice returned to the party and found Michael talking with Emma's future in-laws. She joined the conversation, laughing at appropriate moments, playing her role perfectly inside. Her stomach churned. Across town, Linda was breaking into their house, Janice's house, to steal documents that would prove Michael's crimes. If anything went wrong, if he found out, if the security system had been changed after all. Mom, are you okay? You look pale. Janice focused on Emma's concerned face. Just emotional. Seeing you so happy makes me realize how fast time has gone. Emma hugged her. I love you. You know that, right? Whatever's going on with you and Dad, however it works out, I love you both. The words were meant as comfort. They felt like a vice tightening around Janice's heart. She kissed Emma's forehead and told her everything would be fine, knowing it was a lie. Knowing fine had stopped being possible the moment the security guard laughed. The dinner stretched on. Dessert was served. More toasts were made. Michael cornered Janice near the end of the evening. Can we talk? Privately? They stepped out onto the restaurant's terrace, overlooking the dark water. The air was cool, carrying salt and distant car horns. Michael leaned against the railing and sighed. I've been thinking a lot while you were gone. About us, about what we've become. Janice waited. Let him dig his own grave with words. We've grown apart, Janice. You have to feel it too, the distance, the silence. We're not happy anymore. No, she agreed. We're not. He seemed encouraged by this. I think we should be honest with each other. Admit that sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes people change and want different things. What is it you want, Michael? A fresh start for both of us. We could separate amicably. I'd make sure you're taken care of financially. You could travel, pursue interests you've put aside. We'd both be free to find happiness again. Free. What a beautiful word for what he really meant. Divorced, so he could marry Marta, legitimize his second life, cover his tracks completely. When were you planning to ask for this divorce? Janice kept her voice neutral, curious. After the wedding. I didn't want to ruin Emma's day. How thoughtful of you. He missed the sarcasm entirely. I'm trying to do the right thing here. I know this is hard. But staying together when we're both miserable isn't fair to anyone. Janice thought about the documents Linda was copying at that exact moment, bank statements showing his theft, property deeds in Marta's name, evidence of a life built on fraud and lies. She thought about the divorce papers his attorneys had probably already drafted, carefully worded to make him look reasonable while leaving her with scraps. Can I ask you something? She said. Of course. Did you ever love me? Really love me, not just love what I could give you or what I represented or how I made you look. Michael's face did something complicated. For just a moment, she saw uncertainty there, maybe even regret. I did. In the beginning, but people changed, Janice. I changed. We both did. Yes, she said softly, we did. Her phone buzzed in her purse. She glanced down quickly. A text from Linda. Got everything. I'm out. Relief flooded through her. They'd done it. Whatever happened next, they had evidence. They had ammunition. We should get back inside, Janice said. Emma will wonder where we are. Michael took her hand. Thank you for being reasonable about this. I was worried you'd fight me, make it ugly. Why would I do that? If we're both unhappy, divorce is the logical solution. He smiled, relief written across his features. He'd expected tears, she realized. Expected her to beg or rage or crumble. He'd prepared for that version of Janice, the one who'd existed before the security guard laughed. He had no idea who she'd become. They went back inside. Emma was cutting the rehearsal cake, a smaller version of the real wedding cake. Tradition for the rehearsal dinner, everyone gathered around, taking photos, celebrating. Michael stood beside Janice, his hand on her back, playing devoted husband one last time. Janice smiled for the cameras. She toasted her daughter's happiness. She thanked everyone for coming. She was gracious and warm and exactly what a mother should be. And inside, she was counting down the hours until everything Michael had built came crashing down around him. The party wound down near midnight. Emma hugged both her parents, told them the wedding was going to be perfect, thanked them for giving her such a good example of what marriage could be. Janice held her daughter close and whispered, "Remember what I told you. You're strong enough for anything. Don't forget that." "Mom, you're being weird again." "I'm being honest. There's a difference." Michael insisted on driving Janice back to her hotel. She didn't argue. Let him play gentleman one more time. Let him think she was docile and reasonable and broken enough to accept whatever crumbs he threw her. In the car, he talked about the settlement he envisioned. The house would be sold, profits split evenly, retirement accounts divided. He'd continue her health insurance for a while, help her get established somewhere new. He was so generous in his fantasy of how he'd discard her, so magnanimous in explaining how he'd destroy her life while making it seem like kindness. Janice listened and nodded and said nothing about the evidence now in Linda's possession, nothing about Richard Chen's investigation into Wells Corporation. Nothing about the federal auditors who'd soon be asking questions Michael couldn't answer. "Thank you for driving me," she said when they arrived at the hotel. "Of course, Janice, I do care about you. I want you to know that. This isn't about not caring." "I know exactly what this is about, Michael." He took that as agreement, as acceptance. He squeezed her hand and drove away, probably heading to Marta's place, to the woman who still believed in him, still thought she'd won the prize. Janice went up to her room and called Linda. "Did you get everything?" "More than everything." Linda's voice was electric with triumph. "Janice, this is bigger than we thought. He's been stealing for years. From the company, from clients, from you. The offshore accounts alone are worth millions, and I found something else." "What?" "Insurance policies, life insurance policies on people who aren't family, people he works with, people he's invested in properties with, including one on Marta Isabel, taken out 3 months ago, a policy that pays out double if she dies while pregnant." The hotel room tilted. Janice sat down hard on the bed. "He's planning to kill her. That would be my assessment. The policy is too specific, too strategic. Men don't take out $1 million insurance policies on pregnant girlfriends unless they're planning to collect. We have to warn her. We will, but carefully. If she goes to Michael with this, he'll know someone's been in his files. He'll destroy evidence, disappear funds, make himself impossible to catch. Then what do we do? We move fast. I'm taking everything to the FBI tomorrow morning. Financial fraud, suspected homicide, insurance fraud. It's enough to open an investigation. And once that starts, Marta becomes protected, whether she knows it or not." Janice thought about the woman in the lobby, walking past her like she was invisible. Thought about Marta's hand on her stomach. Protecting a baby she didn't know was a death sentence. Thought about Michael's gentle touch, his loving smile, all of it disguising the calculation underneath. "Do it," Janice said. "Give them everything. Let's end this." After hanging up, she sat in the dark hotel room and thought about the wedding tomorrow. Emma getting married, becoming someone's wife, stepping into the institution that had nearly destroyed Janice. She wanted to warn her daughter, to tell her that marriage was a minefield, that trust was a liability, that love could be weaponized, but that wasn't fair. Emma deserved her happiness, deserved her chance to build something real with someone honest. Just because Janice's marriage had been built on lies didn't mean all of them were. Her phone rang. Davidson. "I've been following up on Linda Hartley's lead about the woman who drowned Grace. I found something." "What?" "The investigating officer retired right after closing her case. Moved to the Bahamas, bought a house cash. I'm checking his bank records now, but it smells like a payoff. Michael paid a police officer to cover up murder. That's my working theory, and if he did it once, he could do it again. We need to move fast, Janice. Your window is closing. Linda's taking everything to the FBI in the morning." "Good. That's good. But there's something else. I've been watching Wells Corporation. Marta's been there every day this week. She and Michael had a meeting with some attorneys yesterday. She looked upset when she left." Janice's blood ran cold. "He's setting her up." Whatever he's planning, it's happening soon. That would be my assessment after the wedding, probably. While everyone's distracted with celebration, the perfect time for tragedy to strike. Janice stood and paced the small room. Everything was happening too fast and too slow at the same time. The walls were closing in, but Michael still walked free, still smiled and shook hands and built his traps. "Tomorrow," she said. "One way or another, this ends tomorrow." She hung up and looked at herself in the mirror. The woman looking back was someone she barely recognized, harder, sharper, capable of things the old Janice would have condemned. But the old Janice would be dead soon if she hadn't changed. Michael would have divorced her, taken everything, left her with nothing, maybe worse, maybe another convenient accident, another insurance payout, another woman who'd outlived her usefulness. This new Janice refused to be another body she'd fight. She'd expose him. She'd burn his empire down, if that's what it took to survive. The wedding was tomorrow. Emma's perfect day, the last time they'd all play their roles before everything exploded. Janice set her alarm and tried to sleep. Dreams came, Michael's face shifting between love and hatred, security guards laughing, Marta falling into water that rose and rose until it covered everything. She woke before dawn, covered in sweat, knowing that tomorrow would change everything, knowing that whatever happened, there was no going back to the woman who'd believed in happy endings. That woman was gone. Dead as Michael's victims, dead as the marriage she'd thought was real. In her place stood someone new, someone Michael Wells should have been afraid of from the very beginning. Chapter 7. The Wedding Day. Emma looked like a dream in her wedding dress. Janice helped her daughter with the final adjustments, pinning the veil just right, making sure every detail was perfect. They were in the bridal suite at the venue, surrounded by bridesmaids and flowers and champagne that nobody was drinking yet. Too early for champagne, too important to risk being anything less than sharp. "You're quiet, Mom." Janice forced a smile. "Just taking it all in. My baby is getting married." "I'm nervous." Emma's hand shook slightly as she touched her hair. "What if I trip walking down the aisle? What if I cry through the whole ceremony?" "Then you trip and cry. Nobody will care. Everyone's just there to witness you and James promising your lives to each other. The rest is decoration." Emma hugged her carefully, mindful of the dress. "I'm so glad you're here. I know things have been strange between you and Dad lately, but seeing you both here, both supporting me, it means everything." Janice held her daughter close and breathed in the scent of her hair, the expensive perfume. The newness of this moment, she wanted to freeze time. Keep Emma safe in this bubble where her parents were solid and marriage was beautiful and love was enough. But time moved forward, whether you wanted it to or not. "I need to tell you something," Janice said quietly. "Not now, not today, but soon. Things are going to change, and I need you to know that whatever happens, whatever you learn, I love you. That's never been a lie." Emma pulled back, concerned. "Mom, you're scaring me." "Don't be scared. Be ready. There's a difference." Before Emma could ask more questions, the wedding coordinator appeared, announcing it was time to line up. The ceremony was starting. The bridesmaids filed out, giggling and nervous. Emma took a deep breath. "This is it. This is it," Janice agreed. They walked to where Emma's father waited, looking distinguished in his tuxedo. Michael's face lit up when he saw Emma, genuine pride and love shining through. For a moment, just a moment, Janice remembered why she'd fallen in love with him. He'd looked at her like that once, like she was precious, like she mattered, but that man had never really existed. Or maybe he had, briefly, before ambition and greed and cruelty replaced whatever goodness had been there. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," Michael said, taking Emma's hand. "Thanks, Dad." Emma looked between her parents. "Are you guys going to be okay? Really okay?" "We're fine," Michael said smoothly. "Today is about you." The music started. Emma took her father's arm. Janice moved to her designated position, ready to walk down the aisle ahead of them. She caught Michael's eye for just a second. He smiled at her, relieved, grateful that she was playing along, making this day perfect for their daughter. He had no idea that federal agents were reviewing the documents Linda had delivered that morning. No idea that his empire was already crumbling. No idea that the wife he'd discarded had become the architect of his destruction. The ceremony was beautiful. Emma and James exchanged vows that made half the audience cry. They promised forever to each other with young voices full of faith. Janice watched from the front row and wondered if she'd sounded that certain on her own wedding day. Probably. Back when she'd believed in forever. Michael sat beside her, playing devoted husband for the cameras. His hand found hers during the vows. She let him hold it. One last performance of a marriage that had ended the moment she'd understood what he really was. The reception was held in a garden, fairy lights strung through trees, tables decorated with flowers that smelled like hope. Janice moved through it all like a ghost, smiling and hugging people and accepting congratulations on raising such a wonderful daughter. Davidson had texted her during the ceremony. FBI opened an investigation, moving faster than expected. They want to interview you tomorrow. Tomorrow. Less than a day before Michael would learn that everything was falling apart. Linda was here somewhere. Janice had spotted her in the crowd, an uninvited guest who blended in perfectly. Insurance. Linda had called it witness, in case Michael tried anything desperate. The father-daughter dance made everyone teary. Michael held Emma and whispered something that made her laugh. For a moment, Janice felt a pang of doubt. Was she doing the right thing? Was destroying Michael worth destroying Emma's faith in her father? But then she thought about Marta, pregnant and unaware of the insurance policy on her life. Thought about the woman who drowned. Thought about Michael's dead business partner. Thought about all the people he'd hurt and would keep hurting if nobody stopped him. Yes, this was right, even if it hurt, especially because it hurt. The mother-son dance, Emma and her new father-in-law, came next. Then the moment Janice had been dreading, the dance for the couple's parents. Michael extended his hand. "Dance with me?" She took it, let him pull her onto the dance floor. Let him place his hand on her waist while everyone watched and smiled at the devoted couple who'd raised such a wonderful daughter. "Thank you," Michael said quietly as they swayed to the music. "For making this easy, for not causing a scene. I know this can't be simple for you." "Nothing about this is simple. After tonight, we can finalize everything. The paperwork is drawn up. You'll be taken care of, Janice. I promise." She looked up at him. Really looked. Tried to find some remnant of the man she'd loved, but there was nothing there except calculation. Every word, every gesture, every smile, all of it designed to get what he wanted while paying the smallest possible price. "Michael," she said softly. "Yes? When did you stop being real? When did you become this?" His expression flickered. Surprise, maybe guilt, quickly covered. "I don't know what you mean." "Yes, you do." The song ended. They separated. Michael kissed her cheek for the cameras, and Janice walked away feeling like she'd said goodbye to a corpse. The man she'd married was long dead. This thing wearing his face was something else entirely. She found Linda near the edge of the garden, half hidden by shadows. "He suspects nothing," Linda said quietly. "How long do we have?" "FBI is moving Monday morning, 3 days. After that, he'll know." "What about Marta?" "I sent her a message, anonymous, untraceable. Told her to Google Grace Anderson drowning and James Hartley death, and to think carefully about insurance policies. She hasn't responded. She won't believe it. She loves him. Love makes people stupid, but fear makes them smart. If she's halfway intelligent, she'll at least be suspicious. That might be enough to keep her safe." The reception continued around them. Emma and James cut the cake. Toasts were made. People danced and laughed and celebrated love. Janice watched Michael work the room, shaking hands, telling stories, being the perfect father of the bride. Near the end of the evening, he pulled her aside again. "Come home tonight. Don't go back to that hotel. We should talk properly, figure out the next steps together." "I don't think that's a good idea." "Janice, please. We've been together more than 2 decades. We owe each other an honest conversation at least." She wanted to refuse, wanted to tell him she knew everything, that the FBI was coming, that his carefully constructed lies were about to explode, but something held her back. Curiosity, maybe, or the need to look him in the eye one more time and see if he'd tell the truth when confronted. "Fine," she said. "One conversation. Then I'm leaving." Relief washed over his face. "Thank you. That's all I'm asking." Emma found them before they could say more, pulling them both into a hug. "My parents, I love you both so much. Thank you for giving me this perfect day." Janice held her daughter and thought about how that perfection was built on lies. Everything beautiful in Emma's life, the stable home, the college education, the wedding itself, had been paid for with money Michael stole. The foundation was rotted through. But Emma didn't need to know that tonight. Let her have one perfect day before the truth destroyed everything. The reception ended near midnight. Guests filtered out, drunk on champagne and romance. Emma and James left in a car, trailing tin cans, heading for a hotel before their flight to Greece. In the morning, Janice kissed her daughter goodbye and felt something tear inside her chest. "Be happy," she whispered. "Whatever happens, be happy." "I will, Mom. I love you." "I love you too. So much more than you know." Then Emma was gone, and Janice was alone with Michael in the parking lot, fairy lights still twinkling in trees, the ghost of celebration hanging in the air. "Follow me home," Michael asked. Janice looked at him. This man who'd promised forever and delivered betrayal. This man who'd built a double life and planned to kill to protect it. This man she'd loved with everything she had. "Lead the way," she said. They drove through quiet streets, Michael's car ahead of hers. Janice followed him toward the house they'd shared, the home where she'd raised their daughter, the place that should have been sanctuary but had become a crime scene waiting to be discovered. Her phone buzzed. "Davidson, don't go in that house alone. Please, wait until morning." But Janice kept driving. She needed this. Needed to face Michael in the place where they'd built their false life together. Needed to look him in the eye and ask the questions that had been burning inside her since the security guard laughed. Maybe he'd lie. Probably he'd lie, but she'd know. She'd see it in his face, hear it in his voice. She'd have that much truth at least before everything exploded. The house appeared ahead, dark except for the porch-light home. What a strange word for a place that had never really existed. Janice parked and walked to the door. Michael was already inside, turning on lights, looking comfortable and confident. Why wouldn't he be? This was his domain, his castle. He thought he controlled everything here. He didn't know that Linda had already taken photographs of every document in his office. Didn't know that federal agents were building a case against him. Didn't know that the woman following him inside was someone completely different from the wife he'd dismissed. "Coffee?" Michael asked, heading for the kitchen. "Why not?" She followed him into the home they'd shared, ready for one last conversation with the man who'd destroyed her life, ready to watch his face when he realized everything was over, ready to finally stop pretending any of this had been real. Chapter 8. The Disappearance. The coffee tasted bitter. Michael had never learned to make it right, always too strong, too harsh. Janice sipped it anyway, sitting at the kitchen table in the house that used to feel like hers. Michael paced by the counter, running his hand through his hair. He looked exhausted suddenly, like maintaining all his lies had finally caught up with him. "I've been thinking about how to say this," he started, "about the right way to end things after all these years." There is no right way. No, but there are better and worse ways. He sat down across from her. I want you to understand, this isn't about you being inadequate or doing anything wrong. We just grew into different people. Janice set down her coffee cup carefully. When did you become someone who lies this easily? His expression shifted. I'm not lying. I'm trying to be honest. Honest? That's a fascinating word choice from a man with 2 wives. The color drained from Michael's face. Complete silence fell, broken only by the kitchen clock ticking. Janice watched him calculate, watched him try to figure out how much she knew, how she'd found out, what move to make next. I don't know what you're talking about, he finally said. Marta Isabel, the woman who comes to your office every day, the woman everyone thinks is Mrs. Wells, the woman carrying your baby. Michael stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Who told you that? Who's been... Does it matter? You built a second life. You told her I was dead. You bought her houses with money you stole from me. From us. Janice's voice was eerily calm. The only question I have left is, were you planning to divorce me or kill me? That's insane. You sound paranoid. Do I? Let's talk about Grace Anderson, or your former business partner James Hartley, both conveniently dead, both with insurance policies that paid you significant money. Michael's hands were shaking now. Those were accidents, tragedies. And the insurance policy you took out on Marta, the one that pays double if she dies while pregnant, is her death going to be a tragedy too? I don't have to listen to this. You're clearly having some kind of breakdown. He moved toward the door, but Janice stood, blocking his path. I'm not done. Get out of my way, Janice. Your way. This is my house too. Legally, financially, actually mine. You just forged my signature to mortgage it. She watched his face. Oh yes, I know about that too. I know about everything, Michael. The offshore accounts, the shell companies, the theft, all of it. You can't prove any of that. Actually, I can. So can the FBI. They received quite a file this morning. Bank statements, property records, insurance documents, everything needed to build a case for fraud, theft, and suspected homicide. Michael's face transformed. The mask fell away completely, revealing something cold underneath. You've been planning this. While pretending to cooperate, while playing the reasonable wife, you've been plotting against me. I've been surviving, there's a difference. I should have known you'd be vindictive about this, that you couldn't handle losing with Grace. Losing? This isn't a game, Michael. You destroyed our marriage. You stole from me. You're planning to kill an innocent woman, and you're acting like I'm the unreasonable one for objecting. Marta isn't innocent. She knew exactly what she was doing, knew I was married, didn't care as long as she got her properties and her lifestyle. You told her I was dead. So she's gullible. That doesn't make her innocent. Janice stared at him, seeing clearly for the first time how thoroughly the man she'd loved had disappeared. This person wearing his face had no empathy, no remorse, no recognition that other people were real beyond what they could provide him. When did this happen to you? She asked quietly. When did you become a monster? I became successful. That's what happened. I learned to make hard choices, to do what was necessary instead of what was nice. You wanted the house, the lifestyle, the status. You think that came free? Someone has to be willing to get dirty. Killing people isn't getting dirty, it's murder. I never killed anyone. But his voice was uncertain now, defensive. He grabbed his phone from the counter. I'm calling my attorney. You've clearly lost your mind, and I'm not having this conversation without legal counsel. Janice reached for her own phone. Call whoever you want my attorney, and the FBI already have everything they need. Michael froze. For several long seconds, they stood in the kitchen staring at each other. The marriage they'd built, the life they'd shared, all of it had been reduced to this moment. Then Michael's phone rang. He answered it, listened, his face going white. What do you mean agents are at the office? I don't... No, I haven't. This is a mistake. I'm coming right now. He hung up and grabbed his jacket. Whatever you've done, Janice, whatever you've set in motion, you're going to regret it. I guarantee that. Are you threatening me? I'm warning you, you have no idea what you're playing with. He left, slamming the door hard enough to rattle windows. Janice heard his car start, tires squealing as he peeled out of the driveway. She stood alone in the kitchen, her heart pounding, knees weak. She called Davidson immediately. Michael knows. He just got a call about agents at his office. He's heading there now. Are you safe? I'm at the house. He left, but... She paused, thinking about Michael's warning, about the coldness in his eyes. He might have contingencies, people he's paid to protect his interests. Lock everything, I'm on my way. After hanging up, Janice went to Michael's office. The filing cabinet was locked, but she found the key in his desk drawer. Inside were folders neatly labeled: properties, insurance, accounts, personal. She pulled out the insurance folder and flipped through until she found it. Marta Isabel, policy amount 1 million, beneficiary Michael Wells. A notation in the margins: double indemnity for death during pregnancy. She photographed the policy and texted it to Davidson and Linda. Linda called immediately. Where are you? Michael's office, at the house. Get out, right now. If Michael realizes you have access to that, I know I'm leaving. But before she could move, headlights swept across the front window. A car pulling into the driveway. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Marta. Who are you, and why did you send me those names? The car door opened. Marta Isabel stepped out, her silhouette unmistakable even in darkness. Janice went to the door and opened it before Marta could knock. They stood facing each other, the wife and the mistress, separated by a threshold and a shared delusion about who Michael Wells really was. You're her, Marta said, the first wife, the one he said died. I'm very much alive. He told me, he showed me the death certificate. He lied about everything, including what he's planning to do to you. Marta's hand moved protectively to her stomach. What are you talking about? Come inside, we need to talk. Marta stepped inside. Janice led her to Michael's office and showed her everything: the filing cabinet, the insurance policy with her name on it, Davidson's research on Grace Anderson and James Hartley, the pattern of convenient deaths. Marta read it all, her face going paler and paler. When she finished, she sat down heavily in Michael's chair. He's going to kill me. That's what the evidence suggests. But I'm pregnant. I'm carrying his child. That's exactly why. The insurance pays double. Marta started crying, harsh sobs that shook her whole body. Janice watched, feeling strange sympathy for this woman who'd unknowingly walked into the same trap. What do I do? Marta asked through tears. You leave, tonight. You go somewhere safe and you cooperate with the FBI. You testify against him. And you never trust Michael Wells again. Marta's phone rang. She looked at the screen and went white. It's him. Don't answer. But Marta answered anyway. Hello? Even from across the desk, Janice could hear Michael's voice, panicked and rushed. Marta listened, said, okay, a few times, then hung up. He's been arrested. The FBI took him into custody. He wants me to call his attorney to help coordinate his defense. Somewhere in the house, glass shattered. Both women froze. Footsteps in the hallway, heavy and deliberate. Janice's mind raced. She'd anticipated this possibility. Michael having someone on standby to destroy evidence if things went wrong. She'd prepared for it. Follow me, she whispered to Marta. Stay quiet. She led Marta to the kitchen pantry, pushed her inside. Lock it from the inside. Don't open it unless you hear my voice saying your full name. Not Michael's voice, not anyone else's. Mine. What are you? Just do it. Janice closed the pantry door and heard the lock click. Then she moved to the kitchen counter where she'd placed her bag earlier. Inside was pepper spray Davidson had given her weeks ago, back when she'd first started investigating. She'd thought it was paranoid then. Now she was grateful. She also grabbed a heavy cast-iron skillet from the stove. Not elegant, but effective. The footsteps came closer. A man appeared in the kitchen doorway, tall, unfamiliar, wearing dark clothes. He stopped when he saw her. "Mrs. Wells, Mr. Wells sent me to retrieve some documents from his office. He'd like you to cooperate. He's in FBI custody. He can't send anyone anywhere. He made arrangements before that unfortunate event." The man stepped forward. "Now I'm going to need you to step aside while I—" Janice raised the pepper spray and fired directly into his face. He screamed, hands flying to his eyes. She swung the skillet hard, connecting with his shoulder. He stumbled backward, crashed into the doorframe. "You should have checked who you were threatening," Janice said, her voice cold and steady. "I'm not the woman Michael thought he married anymore." The man lunged blindly toward where he'd last heard her voice. But Janice had already moved, circling behind him. She brought the skillet down on the back of his knee. He collapsed, cursing. She pulled out her phone and dialed Davidson. "I have an intruder contained back entrance. He's down, but not out. How far away are you?" 2 minutes. Keep yourself safe." She kept the pepper spray aimed at the man on the floor. "Don't move, don't even think about it." He tried to push himself up. She sprayed him again. He went down, gagging. When Davidson burst through the front door moments later, gun drawn, he found Janice standing over the intruder with a skillet in one hand and pepper spray in the other. "Well," Davidson said, lowering his weapon, "looks like you had things handled." "I learned from the best." Police arrived minutes later. They took the intruder into custody. He'd been hired by Michael to destroy evidence, as Janice had suspected. Davidson confirmed that Michael had tried to make a call from FBI custody, but they'd intercepted it. Only after the police had the situation secured did Janice open the pantry door. "Marta Isabel, it's safe now." Marta emerged, shaking. She looked at Janice with new eyes. "You saved us." "I saved myself. You just happened to be here." Linda arrived. Having been watching from down the street, she'd been the one who called Davidson when she saw the intruder's car arrive. They all stood in the front yard while agents photographed the crime scene. The house, lit up with police flashlights, agents moving through rooms collecting evidence, had been transformed from home to crime scene. But Janice was alive. Marta was alive. Michael was in custody. And finally, the truth was coming to light. "You could have waited for me," Davidson said. "I could have, but then I wouldn't have learned what I'm capable of." Janice looked at the house, at the life she was leaving behind. "Michael spent years making me feel weak, helpless, like I needed him to survive. Turns out I just needed him gone." Linda smiled. "You've come a long way from the woman in the lobby." "That woman doesn't exist anymore. She disappeared the moment she decided to fight back." They stood together in the darkness, 3 women and 1 investigator, bound by their determination to stop a man who'd hurt too many people for too long. And somewhere in a jail cell, Michael Wells was finally beginning to understand that the woman he'd underestimated had been the most dangerous person in his life all along. Chapter 9. The Trial of Trust. 3 months felt like 3 lifetimes. Michael sat in jail awaiting trial, denied bail after prosecutors argued he was a flight risk, with means and motive to disappear. Janice had watched that hearing from the gallery, had seen her husband, soon to be ex-husband, led into the courtroom in orange scrubs. He'd looked at her once, his expression somewhere between pleading and hateful. She'd looked back without flinching. Let him see what he'd created. The media had devoured the story. CEO with secret second life, possible involvement in multiple deaths, insurance fraud, embezzlement. It checked every box for national headlines. Janice's face was everywhere. So was Marta's. 2 women betrayed by the same man, their pain analyzed and dissected by strangers with opinions Emma had taken it worst of all. She'd returned from her honeymoon to find her father arrested, her mother splashed across news sites, her entire childhood reframed as a lie. She'd called Janice crying, demanding to know why she hadn't been told sooner, why she'd been allowed to get married while everything fell apart. "I wanted you to have one perfect day," Janice had said, "before everything changed. You should have told me. I deserved to know. You're right. I'm sorry." The apology hadn't fixed anything. Emma was speaking to her, but carefully, with a distance that hurt worse than silence. She refused to visit Michael in jail, refused to take his calls. But that didn't mean she'd forgiven Janice for keeping secrets. Marta had taken the plea deal prosecutors offered. Testify against Michael in exchange for immunity on minor financial charges. She'd moved in with her sister, was building a nursery for the baby. She and Janice weren't friends, probably would never be, but they'd formed something like an alliance, united by shared damage. The trial was set to begin in 2 weeks. Michael's attorneys had been trying to get charges dismissed, claims of insufficient evidence, unreliable witnesses, contaminated investigation. Nothing had worked. The case against him was solid, built on documents from his own files, testimony from victims who'd been waiting years to be heard. Linda had been vindicated. Her husband's death was being reinvestigated. The retired police officer who'd closed the case was facing charges of his own. Grace Anderson's family had filed a civil suit. The dominoes were falling, one after another, crushing everything Michael had built. Janice's attorney called one afternoon with unexpected news. "Michael wants to talk to you. His lawyers approached me about arranging a meeting." "Why would I agree to that?" "They're suggesting a deal. If you'll testify on his behalf at trial, about his character, about him being a good husband and father, they think they can get the sentence reduced." Janice laughed, bitter and sharp. "They want me to lie under oath to save him?" They're framing it as helping Emma maintain her relationship with her father, arguing that regardless of what he did to you, he was a good father to your daughter. That prison will destroy that relationship forever. And if I refuse? Nothing changes. The case proceeds. They're grasping at straws. Janice Michael knows he's facing significant prison time. He's desperate. Janice thought about Emma's face at the wedding, radiant with joy. Thought about her daughter's tears when she learned the truth. Thought about the college education Michael had paid for with stolen money, the childhood memories built on a foundation of lies. Tell them no, Michael made his choices. He can live with the consequences. 3 days later, Michael's attorney called Janice directly, bypassing her lawyer. She almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "Mrs. Wells, I know this is irregular, but Michael has asked me to deliver a personal message. I'm not interested in his messages. Please, just hear me out. He's written you a letter. He's asking that you read it before making any final decisions about testifying. I've already decided. He's aware. But he's hoping you'll grant him this one last conversation. If not for him, then for Emma. She deserves to have both parents in her life, even if they're divorced." Guilt wormed through Janice's defenses. Emma did deserve better than this. Deserved parents who hadn't imploded her world. But giving Michael what he wanted felt like losing, like letting him manipulate her one more time. "Fine," she said finally. "I'll read the letter, but that doesn't mean anything changes." The letter arrived by courier that evening. Thick paper, Michael's handwriting, pages of words designed to move her. She sat in her hotel room, still living in hotels, unable to return to the house that held too many ghosts, and read what her husband had written. "Janice, I don't expect you to forgive me. I know what I've done is unforgivable. The lies, the betrayal, the hurt I caused you and Emma and everyone else, there are no words that can make it right. But I need you to understand something. I never meant for it to happen like this. When I started making questionable decisions, it was survival. The company was failing. We were about to lose everything. I made one bad choice to keep us afloat, then another to cover the first, then more and more, until I couldn't find my way back to who I used to be. By the time I met Marta, I was so deep in the lies that adding one more seemed natural. I'd already become someone I didn't recognize. What's one more layer of deception when your entire life is built on fraud? I know how this sounds, like excuses, like manipulation. Maybe it is, but it's also true. I did love you, Janice, in the beginning, and I love Emma with everything I have. Those were the only real parts of my life. Everything else was performance and survival and fear. I'm not asking you to save me. I'm asking you to help Emma maintain some relationship with her father. She's already lost her faith in marriage, in trust, in everything we taught her about family. Don't let her lose me completely. Whatever I am, whatever I've become, I'm still her father. That hasn't changed. If you testify about the early years, about when we were happy, about me being a present father despite my flaws, it could make a difference in sentencing. Not freedom, I understand that's not possible, but maybe reducing the sentence enough that I'm not an old man when I get out, that I have a chance to rebuild something with Emma. I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but I'm asking anyway. Not for me, for our daughter. Michael. Janice read the letter twice, looking for manipulation. For the places where truth became lie, she found them. The minimizing of his crimes, the framing of choices as inevitability, the equation of financial pressure with murder. But she also found Emma's name over and over, and that part felt genuine. Michael might be a monster, but he did love their daughter. That had always been true. She called Emma. Your father wants me to testify for him at trial, to talk about him being a good father. Silence on the other end. Then, what are you going to do? I don't know, that's why I'm calling. What do you want? I want him to not have done any of this. I want my life back. I want to stop being the woman whose father is a murderer and fraud. I know, sweetheart. But if you're asking if I want him to rot in prison forever or have a chance at getting out eventually. Emma's voice cracked. I don't know, Mom. I'm so angry at him, so hurt, but he's still my dad. Does that make me awful, that I still care what happens to him? It makes you human. I can't tell you what to do. Whatever you decide, I'll understand, or try to. Everything's such a mess. After hanging up, Janice sat with the weight of the decision. Testifying for Michael meant helping him, giving him ammunition for mercy. It meant standing in front of a court and talking about the good times, the moments of genuine connection, the father who'd attended every dance recital, even when work demanded otherwise. But testifying against him, or refusing to testify at all, meant potentially adding years to his sentence. Meant Emma losing her father for most of her adult life, meant the finality of complete destruction. She thought about what Linda would say, what Davidson would advise, what any reasonable person would tell her. Let Michael face the full consequences of his actions. But she also thought about Emma's voice on the phone, still calling him Dad, despite everything. Still hoping for some version of family to survive the wreckage. The trial began on a cold morning. Janice sat in the gallery watching prosecutors present their case. Document after document, witness after witness, building an overwhelming picture of fraud, theft, manipulation. Michael's attorneys fought back, challenging evidence, questioning testimony, but they were swimming upstream. Marta testified. She described meeting Michael, falling in love, being told his wife had died. She described the properties he'd bought in her name, the money he'd moved through accounts she'd helped open. She described finding out about the insurance policy, about Grace Anderson, about the pattern of deaths she cried on the stand. The jury watched her with sympathy, another victim of Michael Wells's pathological need for control. Linda testified about her husband's death, about years spent trying to find justice, about watching Michael prosper while her family grieved. Her voice was steel and fire. The jury leaned forward, paying attention. Then it was the prosecution's turn to rest. Michael's attorneys called their witnesses, character witnesses who spoke about his philanthropy, his business acumen, his devotion to his daughter. They painted a picture of a man who'd made mistakes under pressure, but wasn't a monster. Then they called Janice to the stand. She'd agreed, finally, not to lie. She'd never lie under oath, but to tell the truth about the early years, about Michael as a father, about the parts of him that had been real before everything corrupted. She walked to the witness stand, raised her hand, swore to tell the truth. Michael's eyes followed her, desperate and pleading. The defense attorney smiled warmly. "Mrs. Wells, thank you for being here. Can you tell the court about your marriage to Michael Wells, specifically the early years?" Janice looked at the jury, 12 faces watching her, waiting to hear what she'd say. She looked at Emma, sitting in the back row, eyes red from crying. She looked at Michael, whose entire future hung on her words. Then she spoke. "Michael Wells was my husband for more than 2 decades. In the beginning, he was charming, ambitious, genuinely kind. He worked hard. He provided for our family. He was present at our daughter's birth, at school events, at the 1,000 small moments that make up a life together." The defense attorney nodded encouragingly. "So he was a good father?" "He played the role beautifully." Janice kept her voice level. "But that's what it was, a role. Because a good father doesn't build his daughter's life on money stolen from others. A good father doesn't teach his daughter that love means lying and manipulation. A good father doesn't make his child choose between condemning him and betraying her own moral compass." The attorney's smile faltered. "Mrs. Wells, you thought I'd come here and save him, convince the jury that despite everything he's worthy of mercy. But mercy requires remorse, and Michael Wells has never been truly sorry for anything except getting caught." The courtroom went silent. Michael's face had gone white. His attorney was frantically whispering to his colleagues. "Your Honor," Janice said, addressing the judge directly, "I came here to tell the truth. The truth is that Michael was good at pretending to be a good husband and father. The truth is that our daughter loved him because she didn't know who he really was. The truth is that he destroyed lives without hesitation whenever it served his purposes. That's what Emma learned from her father. Not how to be good, but how to hide evil behind a pleasant mask." The defense attorney tried to object, but the judge overruled. Janice continued, telling the court about the forgery, the insurance policies, the pattern of convenient deaths. She spoke calmly, factually, destroying every defense Michael had prepared. When she finished, she stepped down from the stand. Michael's attorneys tried to salvage their case, but the damage was done. Janice had been their last hope, and she'd burned it to the ground. The jury deliberated for less than a day, guilty on all counts. Sentencing was scheduled for the following month. Janice didn't attend. She'd said everything she needed to say. Emma called her afterward. "That was brutal, Mom. What you said about Dad. I know I'm sorry you had to hear it. I'm not. I needed to hear it. Needed someone to say out loud what I've been feeling. That being good at pretending doesn't make you good. He does love you, Emma. That part was always real. Maybe. But love without honesty isn't really love, is it? It's just another lie in a prettier package." They talked for a long time that night, mother and daughter rebuilding something from the rubble. It wasn't the relationship they'd had before, but it was real in a way the old one never could have been. Built on truth instead of performance, Linda called to thank Janice for testifying. "You could have gone easy on him. Part of me thought you would for Emma's sake." Emma needed to see that protecting someone doesn't mean enabling them. That love without accountability is just cowardice dressed up as kindness. Still, it took guts. Or spite. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. Marta sent a text. "Thank you for telling the truth. My baby deserves to grow up knowing that truth matters more than comfort." Janice responded, "Your baby deserves to grow up safe. Everything else is bonus." Michael's sentencing came down. The judge's words were harsh, condemning, final. Multiple counts of fraud, embezzlement, suspected involvement in suspicious deaths. The sentence was measured in decades, not years. He'd be old if he ever saw freedom again. Janice felt nothing when she heard. No triumph, no vindication, no satisfaction, just exhaustion, and the slow realization that it was finally over. The trial was done. Michael was convicted. The truth was public. And Janice Jacob could finally stop being the woman who'd been destroyed by Michael Wells and become whoever she was supposed to be next. She just had to figure out who that was. Chapter 10. The woman who knew the jail visiting room smelled like disinfectant and despair. Janice had refused 3 times to come deleted Michael's letters without reading them, ignored his attorney's calls. She owed him nothing, not her time, not her attention, not even the courtesy of a goodbye, but Emma had asked, not demanded, not begged, just asked, quietly, if Janice would consider going, just once, just to close that chapter completely. "I can't go myself," Emma had said. "I'm not ready, but maybe you can tell me if there's anything left worth salvaging, any piece of him that was real." So here Janice sat, waiting for guards to bring Michael from wherever they kept men who'd betrayed everyone who'd ever trusted them. The door opened. He walked in wearing prison clothes that hung loose on a frame that had thinned considerably. His hair had gone mostly grey. He looked smaller somehow, diminished in ways that went beyond physical. He sat down behind the glass partition and picked up the phone. Janice did the same. "You came." His voice was hoarse, like he'd been crying or screaming or both. "Emma asked me to." "How is she?" "Surviving. Building a life with her husband, learning to trust again, slowly." "Does she hate me?" Janice considered lying, offering comfort, but she'd promised herself no more lies. "She's devastated, angry, confused about how to love someone who hurt so many people. But hate? I don't think she knows how to hate you yet. Maybe she never will." Michael's face crumpled. "I never wanted to hurt her." "But you did. Intentions don't erase damage." They sat in silence for a moment, 2 people who'd shared a life now separated by glass and crimes and the wreckage of everything they'd built together. "Why did you come?" Michael finally asked. "You made it clear at trial what you think of me." "I came because Emma needs to know if there was ever anything real between us, if her entire childhood was performance, or if some of it mattered." "It all mattered. That's what makes this so terrible. I loved you both, I still do." "You have a fascinating definition of love. I know how it sounds, but it's true. Everything else, the stealing, the lies, the other women, that was separate, that was survival and fear and ambition gone wrong. But you and Emma were always the real part." Janice studied his face, looking for deception, for the manipulation she'd grown so skilled at detecting, but all she saw was a broken man trying to reconcile who he'd been with, what he'd become. "Do you remember our wedding?" she asked. Suddenly Michael blinked, surprised by the question. "Of course." "What did you promise me that day?" "To love you, honor you, in sickness and health, good times and bad." "And did you mean it? When you said those words, were they real?" He was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible. "I thought I did. I wanted to mean them, but I don't think I understood what those words actually required, what it meant to put someone else first, to choose honesty over convenience, to be worthy of trust. So no, they weren't real. They were real in the moment, but moments don't last when you're not brave enough to protect them." Janice leaned back in her chair. "Emma wanted to know if any of it was real. I can tell her that you loved us the best way you knew how. It just wasn't good enough." "That's more generous than I deserve." "It's not generosity, it's the truth. You were limited by your own character. That's not Emma's fault. and it's not mine. We didn't fail you, Michael. You failed yourself. I know that now. Too late. But I know it. What happens to you now? Prison for a very long time. They're transferring me to a facility upstate next week. My attorney says good behavior might get me out in 20 years. I'll be old. Emma will have grandchildren I'll never meet. You'll have lived an entire life without me. I'm already living a life without you. This just makes it official. Michael pressed his hand against the glass. An old gesture, one he used to make when they'd say goodbye at airports, when distance was temporary and love felt permanent. I'm sorry, Janice, for all of it. I know sorry doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know that I understand what I destroyed. Janice looked at his hand on the glass. She didn't raise her own to meet it. Some gestures belonged to a past that couldn't be reclaimed. I hope you find some peace in here, she said. I hope you use this time to become someone who actually understands what those wedding vows meant. Not for me or Emma, for yourself. Will you visit again? Will Emma ever? I don't know. That's not up to me. Emma will make her own choices about you when she's ready. As for me, this is goodbye, Michael. I came to close this door. Now I'm walking away from it. She stood. Michael stood too, pressed both hands against the glass now, desperate. Please, just tell me, did you ever love me, really love me, or was it always just an obligation? Janice looked at him one last time, the man who'd been her husband, her partner, her daughter's father, the man who'd almost destroyed her, the man who'd taught her that survival sometimes required becoming someone new. I loved who I thought you were. That man never existed, but the woman you tried to destroy, she's more real than she's ever been. She hung up the phone and walked toward the exit. Behind her, Michael was shouting something, but the glass muted it to nothing. She didn't look back. Outside, the sun was blinding after the dimness of the jail. Janice stood on the steps, letting her eyes adjust, breathing air that didn't taste like confinement. Her phone buzzed. Emma. How did it go? Janice typed. I'll tell you over dinner, your place or mine. Mine. I'll cook. Nothing fancy. Perfect. Linda had texted too. Coffee this week? I'm starting a support group for women dealing with legal aftermath of abusive relationships. Thought you might want to be involved. Yes. Send me details. Marta. The baby kicked for the first time today. Thought you'd want to know. That's wonderful. Take care of yourself. Davidson. Final invoice attached. It's been a hell of a ride. Stay safe out there. Will do. Thank you for everything. Janice walked to her car, not the sensible sedan Michael had bought her, but a used SUV she'd purchased herself with money from the settlement. She'd sold the house, couldn't stand to live in that space anymore. She'd found a small apartment near Emma, something manageable and entirely hers. She'd started a consulting service, helping women navigate financial independence after divorce. The irony wasn't lost on her, building a career from the rubble of her own destruction. But it felt right, using what she'd learned to help others avoid her mistakes. The work was hard. The clients came with trauma and fear and anger that mirrored her own. But slowly, case by case, she was helping women reclaim their lives, and in helping them, she was reclaiming something of herself. She drove through the city, taking the long route, past Wells Corporation headquarters, now owned by Richard Chen's company, renamed and restructured, past the coffee shop where she'd met Linda, past the hotel where she'd hidden for months, becoming someone new. She drove past the building where a security guard had laughed at her, had told her she wasn't who she claimed to be. That moment felt like it had happened to someone else now. A different Janice. A smaller one. This Janice, the one who'd survived and fought back and refused to disappear. This version was stronger, scarier, more capable of protecting herself and others. She pulled into her apartment complex and sat in the car for a moment, looking at her new home. It wasn't much. Small, modest, nothing like the house she'd lost. But it was hers, paid for with her own money, filled with furniture she'd chosen, a space where nobody had lied to her or stolen from her or pretended to be something they weren't. Inside, she made tea and sat by the window. She thought about Michael in his cell, probably thinking about her visit, probably regretting everything or regretting nothing. She'd never really know which she thought about. Marta, preparing for motherhood alone, building a different future than she'd imagined. She thought about Linda, channeling decades of grief into helping others. She thought about Emma, learning to trust again, despite everything. And she thought about herself, the woman who'd walked into a building carrying lunch and love and faith, and walked out carrying none of those things, but carrying something else instead: knowledge, strength, the understanding that sometimes the only person who can save you is yourself. Her phone rang. Emma again. "Hey, Mom. Change of plans. Can you come over now instead of tonight? I want you to meet James's parents properly. They're here, and I've been telling them about everything and, well, I'd like them to meet the woman who taught me that strength looks different than we think it does." Janice smiled. "I'll be right there." She grabbed her keys and headed for the door. Before leaving, she caught her reflection in the hallway mirror. She looked different than she had months ago. The silver in her hair was gone, died away, but the lines around her eyes had deepened, etched by tears and rage and resolution. She looked like a woman who'd been through war and survived it, who'd lost everything and discovered that everything wasn't what she'd thought it was anyway. She looked like Janice Jacob, not Wells. Never Wells again, just Jacob. The name she'd been born with, the name she'd carried before Michael, the name she'd reclaim for whatever came next. She locked her door and walked down the hallway, her footsteps steady and sure. Outside, the world continued. Traffic and voices and life happening all around her. She merged into it, just another person living their story, carrying their scars, moving forward, because stopping meant letting the past win. And Janice Jacob was done, letting anything win, except herself. 6 months later, she drove past Wells Corporation headquarters again. The building looked different in spring light, less intimidating, just another tower among towers. She slowed as she passed the entrance where the security guard had once stood. He was still there. Thomas, she remembered his name now. He looked up as her car passed, but there was no recognition in his face. Why would there be? He'd never really seen her that day. Never believed she was who she claimed to be. The irony made her smile. He'd been right about one thing. He hadn't recognized the CEO's wife that day in the lobby. But then again, neither had she. Not until she'd learned who she really was, beneath the title, beneath the marriage, beneath all the roles she'd played for a man who'd never deserved her performance. She drove on without stopping, without looking back, leaving the building and the memory and the woman she used to be behind in the rearview mirror where they belonged. The end.